When a stranger was lounging in my pool chair wearing my sunglasses, I genuinely thought I had walked into a sitcom. The water was rippling in that lazy summertime way, like the universe was shrugging and saying, "Yep, this is happening." Her neon towel lay draped across my patio table. A half-drunk iced tea sat sweating in the heat. My front gate, the locked one I paid a contractor entirely too much to install, swung open like it had never known resistance in its life. I had only left for a single grocery run. And somehow, in that tiny window of time, my backyard had turned into a public resort. The woman, maybe mid-40s and carrying the swagger of someone convinced the world was built to accommodate her personal comfort, lifted my sunglasses just enough to stare me down. Her lips curled into an annoyed pout like I was the intruder in this scenario. Without sitting up, she flicked her wrist dismissively and told me, "You're blocking the sun." I stared back at her, waiting for the joke. Waiting for a camera crew to jump out. Waiting for Ashton Kutcher to announce a reboot of Punk'd. Nothing. Just the sound of water filters humming and a woman dripping with Olympic-level entitlement. I cleared my throat, trying to keep things rational because my therapist insists that patience is a virtue I should try on occasionally. "Hi. You're in my backyard. In my pool. On my furniture." She rolled her eyes so hard I swear the Earth's rotation staggered. "Relax," she said, annoyed. "The HOA president informed us that facilities are shared. And your gate was open." The HOA president. Of course. Because the only group of people who can rewrite reality with more confidence than conspiracy theorists is an HOA board armed with clipboards and gossip. I corrected her calmly, because sarcasm is my shield. "We do not have shared facilities. And that gate locks automatically unless someone wedge-jammed a gardening glove under the latch, which I see you did." Her expression shifted, briefly, like she hadn't expected to be caught. Then she doubled down. "Well, it's hot. And you weren't using it. And my daughter wanted to swim." My gaze traveled to the shallow end where a young girl, maybe 10 or 11, was splashing around happily, completely unaware that her mother was turning this day into a soon-to-be courtroom reenactment. I softened slightly, because kids never ask to be dragged into these ego battles. "I get that. But you need permission to enter someone's property. Pool or not." That's when she stood. Water dripped off her like she was the main character emerging from a dramatic transformation scene. Except instead of dignity or grace, she wore righteous fury. "I pay HOA dues. That means I have access to neighborhood amenities." I held up a finger. "Minor detail, my house isn't in the HOA. Your dues pay for your own landscaping fees and passive-aggressive newsletters, not my chlorine levels." The daughter paused swimming, sensing tension rising like steam off sun-scorched pavement. Karen, because at this point, the name wrote itself onto her forehead in glowing neon, marched toward me, invading my personal bubble as if borders didn't exist anywhere in the universe. "I spoke to Mr. Thompson," she hissed, invoking the HOA president like he was some dark wizard with jurisdiction over all mortal realms. "He told me the previous owners let neighbors use the pool sometimes. So I assumed the rule stands." "Ah yes. The ancient legal doctrine of, I assumed. Ironclad, defense-proof." I exhaled slowly, counting to 3 like my therapist taught me. "I'm not them. And it's my property now. You need to leave." She folded her arms and sneered like I had just suggested she give up her human rights. "You can't make me. There are laws protecting community resource usage." I blinked at her because she had just described my private pool as a community resource with the same conviction as someone defending a public park. It was impressive in a horrifying way. "I am calling the police," I said, voice steady. "You're trespassing." She gasped dramatically, pressing a hand to her chest. "You would traumatize a child over a pool visit? My daughter needs this water. It's a public health thing. Allergies. Stress. Vitamin D." I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. The absurdity was thick as humidity. Your daughter is wearing SPF 80 and floating in a unicorn tube, I pointed out. This isn't medical care. This is entitlement aerobics. Her jaw dropped. You are unbelievable. Without breaking eye contact, she climbed out, wrapped herself in her bright towel, and stormed to the edge of my patio where her sandals waited, placed neatly, as if she owned the place. Instead of putting them on, she bent down, grabbed my garden shears from a nearby potting bench, and chopped through the gate's automatic latch line like she was defusing a bomb in an action movie. Sparks snapped as the wire severed. The gate thudded closed with a hollow finality. There, she said triumphantly. Locked. Happy. I stared at the limp cord dangling from the gate, calculating the repair bill in my head. Patience was shrinking. Sarcasm was loading. Wow. Thank you for breaking my property further. You really showed me. She waved me off again. Stop being dramatic. You're lucky I'm here. When I post about this to the HOA community page, you'll be getting a strongly worded call. And just like that, she gathered her daughter, strutted out the broken gate, and slammed it behind her, leaving puddles as souvenirs of her stupidity. I locked the remaining manual latch, breathing through frustration that buzzed in my chest like electricity. My afternoon had been hijacked by someone who believed rules were mere suggestions for lesser beings. I started searching for the number of a gate repair service when my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Against better judgment, I answered. Hello? Dripping with venom, her voice shot through the speaker. You just made a big mistake. The HOA will make you regret treating us like trash. I replied, good luck with that. I'm not in your HOA. She paused. A beat of silence. Then the click of a call ended by someone realizing their power wasn't as absolute as they pretended. I stood there, letting the absurdity settle. But the story wasn't over. Because the next morning, I woke to a notice taped to my front door. A violation. From the HOA. For refusing access to shared property. And that was the moment I decided. If Karen wanted a war over a pool, I would give her the Olympic Games. If the HOA president had taped that violation to my door personally, I wouldn't have been surprised to find his smug grin printed on it like a watermark. The paper practically reeked of petty authority. The accusation was written in bold all caps. Denial of community amenity access. Beneath it, a fine amount that looked suspiciously pulled from thin air. I wasn't part of their HOA. My home existed on a separate parcel grandfathered out decades ago. But Karen had activated something feral within the board, the kind of group outrage only retired neighbors starving for control could muster. I snapped a picture of the notice and emailed it to my real estate attorney, who also happened to be my best friend from college and someone who loved nothing more than humiliating uneducated bureaucrat. He responded within a minute. Burn them alive, not legally binding advice. He then followed with an actual plan. Document everything, call the police if anyone trespasses again, and do not physically engage unless someone is in immediate danger. He knows me too well. I spent the rest of the morning repairing what I could. The automatic latch was toast. The wires Karen sliced were specialized, so until the electrician arrived, I relied on a padlock. It wasn't elegant, but it kept out wannabe community swimmers. Or so I thought. When I looked up from cleaning the patio, a familiar voice shrieked through the fence slats like a vengeful seagull. You locked it? Are you serious? Karen's face appeared between the boards, smeared in heavy foundation that cracked at the corners of her scowl. She tugged violently at the gate handle, rattling it like the bars of a jail cell. This is harassment, she yelled. My daughter has been crying all morning because you think you own the water. I blinked. I do own the water. Literally. I pay for it. She scoffed with the disgust of someone allergic to facts. You don't get to dictate access. We are a community. I approached slowly, savoring the opportunity to test how far her delusions stretched. Karen, if you trespass again, I will escalate this. Legally. She jabbed a perfectly manicured finger at me through the fence like she was casting a curse. Just wait. I'll show you what legal looks like. I smiled because crazy is easier to handle when you treat it like entertainment. I'll bring popcorn. Apparently sarcasm was a war crime in her culture. She marched away with the performance stride of someone rehearsing for a courtroom reality show. That afternoon, my attorney called. He had read my HOA notice while eating breakfast and nearly choked on his toast laughing. They can't enforce anything on you, he assured me. But since they've started this game, your next move is to file a harassment complaint. And if Karen keeps trespassing, we press criminal charges. Simple. It was comforting, having someone who spoke fluent legalese on my side. But emotional comfort was temporary, because the universe was not done throwing chaos grenades into my peaceful suburban existence. At 5:47 p.m., sunlight still golden and high, I heard the unmistakable sound of splashing. Not gentle kids splashing, chaotic cannonball splashing. I rushed out the back door, and there they were. Karen's daughter, plus 3 additional children I'd never seen in my life, thrashing joyfully in my pool like sugar-fueled dolphins. And there, supervising them from a reclined position in my pool chair, was Karen. A large inflatable cooler bobbed beside her containing sodas and what looked suspiciously like a margarita. The padlock? Cut clean through. Bolt cutters sat on the ground near her flip-flops. I stumbled over my own shock. You broke in. She turned, lifting her sunglasses with the flair of a diva in a soap opera reveal. Stop making such a scene. They needed a healthy activity. We're preventing childhood obesity here. I pointed at the bolt cutters. You committed property damage and trespassing again. That's not health. That's crime. She waved me off. Technicalities. I dialed the police. Her eyes widened slightly, a hint of fear, but entitlement quickly smothered it like a fire blanket. You're going to regret this, she hissed. The HOA is already reviewing your behavior. You're unstable. Aggressive. We will have you removed. Removed. From my own home. Bold strategy. The police arrived within 10 minutes. 2 officers. Professional, calm, and already weary of neighborhood dispute. I met them at the gate and explained the situation. Trespassing, property damage, ignoring warnings. Karen climbed out of the pool dripping like a furious mermaid. She stormed toward them, water slapping off her heels as she moved. Thank goodness, she proclaimed loudly. Arrest him. He's threatening children and illegally preventing access to a community pool. One of the officers looked at me. Community pool? I shook my head. Private property. Deeds inside. I can show you. Karen laughed like she had caught me in some grand lie. The HOA has jurisdiction. We pay dues. The officers exchanged looks that said clearly, we know this type. I brought them the deed. They studied it. Nod. Confirmed. Then they faced Karen. Ma'am, you are on private property without permission. You need to leave immediately. Her face morphed through an entire Pixar film's worth of emotions. Denial, rage, disbelief, martyrdom. You're siding with him? She sputtered. This is a community. He thinks he's better than us. The officer remained calm. You need to gather your belongings and exit now. If you return, you can and will be charged. Karen stepped closer to him, her finger jabbing the air like she was trying to poke the law itself. You have no idea who you're dealing with. He replied, a trespasser. Her mouth hung open like her brain had short-circuited. The officers removed everyone. Karen, in an act of defiance, yanked down my pool safety sign, the one required by the city, and threatened to send it for inspection. As if that would hurt me. She stormed off, dragging 4 dripping kids behind her like rubber-banded ducklings. I finally exhaled. Peace. At last. 5 minutes later, a thud hit my door. Another violation notice. Another fine. Another accusation. Violence toward HOA family. Apparently, Karen had wasted no time spinning her fantasy version of reality. And the HOA board? They bought every word like it was on discount. That evening, after the sun dipped and the cicadas started their nightly gossip, my security camera pinged. Motion detected at the back fence. Karen's face glowed ghost-like in the floodlight. She was photographing my pool, my yard, my doors. Every corner of my privacy violated in slow, methodical click, like she was building a case against me for crimes only she believed existed. As she scrambled away when I stepped outside, a chilling certainty formed in my mind. This wasn't over. She wasn't letting this go. And I would not be the one to break first. War it was. 3 days passed without a sighting, and part of me dared hope Karen had moved on to harassing someone else about mailbox paint tones or improperly stored garden gnomes. But silence from an enemy like her isn't peace. It's plotting. I spent those 3 days installing additional cameras, documenting every interaction, and preparing for whatever theatrical nonsense she had brewing. My attorney advised patience. I advised myself to buy more popcorn. On the 4th morning, a knock rattled my front door like someone was trying to break in with sheer irritation. I opened it and found Mr. Thompson, HOA president, flanked by 2 board members who looked like they'd practiced their intimidating faces in the mirror before arriving. Thompson didn't waste time. "We've received multiple complaints," he declared, puffing up like a pigeon claiming territory. "You've been threatening a neighbor and denying amenity access." I leaned against the frame with the relaxed energy of someone who enjoyed watching delusions crumble. "This is my private property. I'm not in your HOA. And your neighbor has been trespassing." Thompson shoved a folder into my hands. "This is a community. We enforce safety. Children deserve a pool to enjoy." Inside were printed screenshots of Karen's wild claims posted on the HOA app. Allegations of me screaming obscenities, throwing objects, traumatizing innocent children. There was even a complaint that I allowed dangerous wildlife into the pool area, which I assumed referred to a squirrel I once rescued from drowning. I handed the folder back. "Your jurisdiction ends at my property line." Thompson stepped closer, lowering his voice to a patronizing whisper. "We could vote to annex your parcel. Many boards do that for the greater good." I already knew the law. Annexation required consent. Mine. He didn't know I knew that. So his confidence smelled like ignorance wrapped in arrogance. "Have fun with that," I replied. "I'll send my attorney flowers for the easy case." He stiffened but hid it quickly. "We'll be monitoring you," he said. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." With that, the trio stalked off, a budget version of a mob movie crew. But the real show arrived that afternoon. I was skimming leaves from the pool when a shriek pierced the air from next door. I looked up to see Karen sprinting out of her house barefoot, waving her phone like a distress flare. "You monster!" she screamed, charging toward the fence. "What did you do to my daughter?" My brain lagged behind her accusation. I stared back in confusion. "What are you talking about?" She shoved her phone through an opening in the fence, screen inches from my face. On it, a photo of her daughter covered in a rash, small red bump. "She swam here," Karen yelled. "And now look. You've poisoned her." I blinked, stunned. "Chlorine reactions exist, Karen. You didn't even ask if she had allergies." But reason was not invited to this conversation. "I'm contacting the health department," she spat. "Your pool is a hazard. It needs to be drained, sanitized, and inspected." I fought the urge to laugh, because how do you respond to a conspiracy that's stupid? "You trespassed into the pool you now claim is dangerous," I reminded her. She ignored me, storming away like a villain mid-monologue. 2 hours later, the health inspector arrived. He was polite, professional, already exhausted by life. He checked chlorine levels, pH, safety equipment, filters. Everything passed. He even complimented me. "This is one of the cleanest pools I've seen," he said, scribbling notes. "Most backyard pools are nightmares." Karen lurked nearby, glaring like a vampire denied blood. When the inspector told her the rash could be plant-related, heat-related, or a contact allergy but not chemical poisoning, she demanded a second opinion. He calmly handed her his card and said she could file a formal appeal. She snatched it like she was confiscating illegal contraband. When he left, she hissed at me through her teeth. "You bribed him." I placed a hand dramatically on my heart. "Ah yes, my bribe budget is overflowing." She pointed a trembling finger at me. "I will find proof. And when I do, the HOA will shut you down." She stomped off like gravity was personally offending her with every step. That night, something new appeared in my yard, a laminated sign zip-tied to my gate. It read, "Community Pool Rules." Below that, a list of guidelines clearly written by someone who believes all fun must be regulated. Curfew times. Visitor limits. Mandatory adult supervision. My name and address printed at the bottom like I was officially hosting the neighborhood swim club. I ripped the sign down and tossed it in the trash. 10 minutes later, Karen reappeared and replaced it with another. This time I didn't remove it. I photographed her doing it. Let the record show, she was digging her own grave. The next day, the escalation turned physical, not with me, but with my property. A rock smashed against my sliding door. Not enough to break the glass entirely, but enough to spiderweb the pane into a mosaic of rage. I looked outside just in time to spot a small figure darting behind Karen's fence. A kid. A pawn in an adult's tantrum. It burned me up inside, seeing her weaponize children. That rage simmered into determination. I installed a camera facing that exact spot. At 7:14 p.m., motion alert. A boy, maybe 11, clutching another rock. Behind him, Karen, whisper coaching. He pulled back his arm, but this time, I was outside before the rock flew. He froze mid-throw. "Hey," I said gently. "I know she told you to do it, but this isn't okay. You can get in serious trouble." Karen exploded from hiding, screeching like a siren. "Don't talk to my son," she howled. "You're a predator." My jaw dropped so hard it nearly dislocated. She grabbed the kid, dragging him home, screaming threats the whole way. I checked the camera footage. Clear view. Clear audio. Her commands. His compliance. The intention unmistakable. I sent everything to my attorney. His reply was simple, perfect. "We have criminal mischief and parental incitement. When she trespasses again, call police immediately. Don't warn." It was advice that aged like fine wine because the very next morning at sunrise, the gate rattled. Karen. Bolt cutters. Same stunt as before. This time, I didn't go outside. I let the camera capture it all. Once she and 2 kids were deep in the pool area, I stepped into my kitchen, dialed the police, and calmly described the situation. But the twist? What happened next took this entire saga into a new, thrilling category: active investigation. Police arrived fast. Faster than last time, almost like they already had concerns. The moment officers stepped inside my yard, one spotted something glinting at the edge of the deep end. He pointed. "What's that?" Another officer knelt, reaching with a pool skimmer. Up came a silver bracelet engraved with a name and phone number. Karen's daughter gasped. Karen went silent. Then came the officer's question. "Is this the missing evidence item from last week's burglary case?" Everything froze. Karen's face drained of all color as she stared at the bracelet. Her daughter whispered, "Mom, isn't that the one from—" Karen cut her off with a look that could shatter bones. And in that moment, I realized. Karen hadn't just been trespassing. She had been hiding something. And now the police wanted answers. The officers stared at Karen as if she had just shape-shifted into a criminal in front of them. She fumbled for words that refused to obey. "That's not ours," she stammered. "We found it. My daughter found it. Probably fell in from, the street." Her daughter's eyebrows scrunched with betrayal. Kids don't do well with improvising lies under pressure. The officer holding the bracelet turned to her gently. "Sweetheart, did anyone give you this?" The girl hesitated, looked at her mother, then back at the officer. "Mom said we should hold on to it because the police didn't deserve nice things," she whispered. Karen's jaw dropped like gravity had forgotten how to Karen-proof her face. One officer stepped aside, radioing dispatch. The tone in his voice shifted from bored suburban mediator to official duty. We may have evidence from Case 417B. Requesting guidance. Karen sputtered. This is ridiculous. It's a misunderstanding. The lead officer pointed at the cut padlock still dangling uselessly from the gate. What isn't a misunderstanding is breaking and entering. Her eyes flicked between the officers, panic surfacing like bubbles rising too fast. She saw the situation slipping. So she did what she always did, tried to twist reality to fit her script. He told us to come in, she insisted, stabbing a finger at me. He threatened us if we didn't. The officer turned to me. Do you give them permission to be here? I shook my head, keeping my voice steady. Not once. Not ever. Cameras recorded everything. Karen let out a sharp laugh, the kind you hear from someone losing the argument but refusing to lose face. Of course he has cameras. Creeps always do. One officer frowned. You're dangerously close to self-incrimination with these accusations. She scoffed. Oh please. Everyone knows he's the problem. The children watched her unravel, eyes wide with confusion and fear. The officer addressed her one final time. Ma'am, gather your children and leave. We will follow up with your household regarding the burglary case. She opened her mouth to argue, but the flash of a recorded body cam seemed to glue her lip. She stormed off, shoes forgotten, dragging the kids again. The youngest dropped a soda can into my pool by accident, apologizing softly before being yanked away. They left like a storm cloud fleeing sunlight. As the officers finished taking statements, one pulled me aside. We've had an eye on the jewelry thefts in this area, he admitted. Small items going missing. Nothing to pin down a suspect. But if we can tie this bracelet to a burglary victim, we'll have questions for her. I nodded, though a nervous chill prickled my skin. I joked about war. Yet now this was escalating past my control. My attorney would need a full update. The second officer paused at the gate, turned back to me and said, By the way, get that lock replaced again. Not because of her, because once people know how easy it is, they come back. His warning lodged itself deep. But the most troubling thing came later. At sunset, Karen's daughter stood alone outside the fence. Not yelling. Not trespassing. Just standing, eyes red and swollen. I approached cautiously, leaving distance. Hey. You okay? She sniffed. My mom said if I tell the truth, we'll have to move away. My heart twisted. She looked so small without the bluster her mother wore like armor. None of this is your fault, I said. Adults make mistakes. Big, stupid ones sometimes. You don't have to protect the wrong thing. She hugged her arms around herself. She said the bracelet was a gift from the man who used to own it. My pulse jumped. What man? She shrugged. I don't know. She told me not to talk about it. Then Karen's screech tore through the air. Get away from him. She sprinted over, grabbing the girl's wrist with a grip too tight. The girl yelped. Mom, I didn't say anything. Karen glared at me with pure venom. You will regret this, she whispered, low and lethal. Then she dragged her daughter indoors and slammed the door. That night, my attorney called after reviewing the new footage. This just became criminal. You're prepared for that? He asked. I didn't hesitate. She crossed every line. He outlined next steps. Harassment complaint filed, property damage documented, police cooperation ongoing, HOA cease and desist drafted. We were building a case stronger than reinforced rebar. I slept lightly, ears tuned to every sound. At 2:13 a.m., the camera alert chimed. Karen again, alone. She lurked near the gate with something in her hand. Suddenly, bright orange flames licked upward. My recycling bin was on fire. I bolted outside with the hose, dousing it before the fence caught. Karen was sprinting home. The camera caught the entire sequence. Arson. No more patience. By morning, police arrived for a formal report. They looked tired of seeing this address pop up in their dispatch history. As one officer collected the charred remnants, the other asked me a question that shifted everything. "Did she ever come inside your home?" "No," I answered, confused. He nodded. "Good. Don't let her." I frowned. "Why?" He exhaled. "Because the victims of the bracelet thefts? They reported missing prescription medications too. Karen wasn't just entitled. She was dangerous. And now the police knew it." Later that same afternoon, Thompson and 2 HOA board members reappeared like they were summoned by the scent of drama. Thompson crossed his arms, expression stern but not confident. "We heard police were here again," he said. "This needs to stop." I stared at him, incredulous. "I'm not the one trespassing, vandalizing, or committing felonies." Thompson's composure slipped. "Just a fraction. Karen says you're harassing her family. Karen is being investigated for theft and arson." His eyes flickered. The board members exchanged nervous glances. I stepped closer, lowering my voice to a precise slice. "And the more this board supports her lies, the more liability you create for yourselves." They froze. The threat wasn't spoken, but it was understood. Thompson cleared his throat. "We'll review our stance," he mumbled, then retreated faster than a cockroach caught in kitchen light. For the first time in weeks, I felt momentum shifting. And then the police called. An officer asked me to come to the station. Not as a suspect, as a witness. Because the bracelet belonged to a woman whose home had been burglarized 2 streets over. And she had provided security footage. Grainy, black and white, but clear enough to identify a very specific vehicle parked in front of her house that night. Karen's Lexus. I nearly laughed. It was too perfect. The officer leaned in, lowering his voice. "We need access to her yard. To search for more missing items. But we need probable cause." I didn't understand at first. "So what do you want from me?" His answer shook me. "We need to subpoena your pool." I blinked. "My pool?" He nodded. "If stolen items were dumped in there, it becomes a crime scene." He saw my hesitation. "We'll handle everything. You'll be fully compensated for damages. But we need that search." I imagined Karen's face when police drained the water she felt entitled to. A poetic consequence. A justice flavored with irony. "I'll allow it," I said. Filing approved within hours. The officers scheduled the search for the next morning. Karen had no idea. That night, as I sat on the back steps sipping a drink, I noticed movement next door. A window. Karen. On the phone. Pacing like a caged tiger fueled by anxiety. She kept looking toward my yard. The paranoia in her posture was loud. She knew something was coming. She just didn't know how bad it was going to be. I smiled into the darkness. Tomorrow, the police weren't coming to break up a dispute. They were coming for evidence. And Karen's pool day was about to become Exhibit A. The morning the police arrived to search my pool felt strangely peaceful. Birds chirped. The sun glimmered on the water like nothing sinister rested beneath the surface. But the 3 patrol cars parking in front of Karen's house offered a contrasting soundtrack. The squeal of brakes, the slam of doors, the crackle of radios. Officers moved with purpose. No small-town politeness this time. Something about the energy said, "This is real, and this is serious." Karen burst out of her house the moment she saw them. Barefoot again. Hair frizzed with panic. A robe tied unevenly around her like she'd dressed while mid-scream. She ran toward the nearest officer, voice pitched like she was auditioning for a horror movie. "What are you doing? You can't just barge in on a family." The officer raised a calm hand. "We have a search warrant for the neighboring property's pool." Her face contorted. "Pool? Why his pool?" He didn't answer, which was an answer. I stood by, arms folded, letting stillness be my weapon. She spotted me and pointed as though she was identifying a criminal mastermind. "He's doing this. He's obsessed with me. He wants to destroy my family." The lead officer turned toward me. "Sir, we'll begin shortly." We'll need you to unlock the gate. I nodded, walking slowly and deliberately, savoring Karen's panic like a gourmet dessert. As the officers stepped inside, Karen pressed against the fence like she could physically push the investigation away with sheer entitlement. You can't listen to him. He has a history of aggression. One officer turned, expression flat. Ma'am, you are being warned again. Remain on your property. But she couldn't. Rule-breaking was her love language. They lowered a pump into the pool. As the water level began to drop, revealing steps long hidden beneath crystal blue, Karen's breathing grew ragged. She paced. She muttered. She tugged at her hair. Her daughter appeared on the porch, hugging a stuffed animal, confusion and fear painted across her features. Karen barked at her to go back inside. The kid didn't move. She was too worried, not about the police, but about her mother's unraveling sanity. As the shallow end fully revealed, the first object surfaced with a clink. A necklace. The officer used gloves to collect it in an evidence bag. A second dive with the skimmer hook pulled up an expensive watch, still ticking faintly like it refused to die. An officer radioed dispatch with a code that made Karen's knees visibly wobble. Then came the big one. In the deep end, wedged against the main drain, something metallic glimmered. A jewelry box, ornate and clearly valuable. When the officer lifted it, water pouring from the carved edges, Karen shrieked. She charged forward and tried to grab it. But two officers intercepted, restraining her before she made contact. I was holding that for a friend, she screamed. We were safe keeping it. That doesn't mean anything. Her voice cracked. The neighbors began to gather, drawn by police lights and Karen's meltdown. Phones rose like flowers in a field, recording every hysterical moment. The police opened the box. Inside, rings, bracelets, pendants, all neatly arranged like someone had collected trophies. Karen saw her world collapsing and changed tactics instantly. Theatrics became martyrdom. She dropped to her knees in the grass, sobbing dramatically. He planted it. He's framing me. This man is sick. A single officer stepped toward her, voice firm. Ma'am, we have camera footage of you breaking into his yard repeatedly. She spat tears. He manipulated the footage. Another officer added, we also have footage from multiple other homes showing your vehicle present during reported burglaries. Her head shot up, hope flickering like a match underwater. Someone stole my car then. The absurdity was almost beautiful. The lead officer stated the inevitable. Karen Miller, you are being detained pending questioning regarding theft, trespassing, property destruction, and potential arson. He read her rights. She shook. She thrashed. She screamed words not found in any HOA rulebook. The children cried, one begging her to stop, the other standing frozen, witnessing her mother turn from superhero to supervillain in a single morning. As she was escorted toward the squad car, she spotted me. The hatred radiating from her eyes could have incinerated lawn chairs. You think you won? You ruined everything. Everyone will know what you did. The irony struck me like a spotlight. I hadn't done anything but protect my home. She had built this disaster brick by brick, lie by lie, tantrum by tantrum. The car door slammed. Silence, except for distant radios and the draining pump humming on. Karen was gone. But the war wasn't over, because the HOA still thought they had authority here. An hour later, Thompson knocked again, timid this time. His voice cracked as he spoke. We, wanted to offer our condolences. I raised an eyebrow. Condolences. He swallowed hard. We didn't know Karen was involved in theft. His sentences tiptoed, terrified of legal implication. We're dropping all complaints against you, he added quickly. And we'd like to formally apologize. He tried for a handshake. I let him sweat before I accepted. As he walked away, shoulders hunched, a board member whispered something to him. He snapped back, No, you write the statement. They scurried off like raccoons fleeing a porch light. My attorney called again, voice giddy with victory. Well, That escalated better than any courtroom drama you could buy tickets for. We laughed, tension finally loosening its grip. But he reminded me that I wasn't just defending myself anymore. A legal case was underway, and there would be hearings, evidence, depositions. I understood. This wasn't entertainment. Not for the victims whose belongings had been stolen. Not for Karen's kids who now faced fallout from crimes they never chose. That evening, I saw the daughter again. Standing alone in her yard. She looked at me, eyes searching for something. Absolution maybe. I didn't know, she whispered across the fence. My throat tightened. I know, I replied. None of this is on you. She hugged her arms and glanced at Karen's dark house. Am I a bad person too? The question hit me harder than any rock thrown at my door. No, I said. Good people sometimes get stuck in bad stories. She nodded slowly, absorbing the lifeline. Will my mom go to jail? I took a breath. She'll have to face consequences. But the truth matters. And you told the truth. A tear slipped down her cheek. I just want things to be normal again. I didn't have a comforting answer. Normal was gone. Later, after the sun dipped below the roofs and porch lights flickered on one by one, I pulled up my security footage. I re-watched everything, not to relive the chaos but to remind myself how dangerously close this came to spiraling further. If I hadn't documented everything, Karen would have weaponized lies into reality. She nearly did anyway. What struck me most wasn't her entitlement. It was her certainty that she could get away with anything. Some people believe rules are obstacles meant for other people. They see boundaries as challenges. They trust manipulation like gravity. But consequences are patient hunters. At 10:19 p.m., a single police car returned. Not to question me, to collect the pump and evidence logged earlier. One of the officers paused and smiled faintly. Just so you know, he said, this is going to court. And thank you for cooperating. I nodded. What will happen to the kids? He sighed. Social services will monitor things. We'll make sure they're safe. Then he left. I sat alone beside my pool, drained both literally and emotionally. Moonlight reflected off the shallow puddle left behind, turning the cracked shadows on the plaster into an abstract painting. This backyard once meant peace. Now it was a crime scene. But tomorrow would bring justice one step closer. And when that verdict finally came down, Karen's pool day wouldn't be the only thing on record. The next few weeks were the kind that make you question whether suburbia is peaceful or simply the perfect camouflage for chaos. Karen's house turned into a rotating stop for patrol cars and social workers. Each visit peeled another layer off the story she'd tried so hard to control. I kept my distance. Not out of mercy, out of strategy. The long game was playing itself now. I didn't need to lift a finger. Still, the silence felt uneasy. I'd grown used to the constant alerts, the banging on my fence, the shrieks of fabricated emergencies. Without her noise, the nights felt too quiet. It turns out peace can feel suspicious when you've survived a war. 2 weeks after the pool search, a detective returned to take a formal witness statement. This wasn't the polite small-talk officer anymore. This was someone who had spent years staring into the darkest parts of suburbia and was not surprised by what he saw. He asked me to recount every incident in detail. Trespassing, vandalism, threats, arson. I told him everything, careful and precise. He nodded often, occasionally jotting something down. When we finished, he closed his notebook and said, "We'll be recommending charges that carry real weight." I asked him the question that had been swirling in my mind since day one. Why steal from neighbors? Why not a store? A stranger across town? He shrugged. Because entitlement turns proximity into opportunity. People like her believe that if something is close enough, it must be meant for them. His perspective hit me harder than the events themselves. Karen didn't just break rules. She rejected the concept of rules entirely. Later that day, I received a written apology from the HOA. An actual letter, on official letterhead, acknowledging their mistakes, their ignorance, and their blind loyalty to a member who weaponized them. They rescinded every violation, every fine, every passive-aggressive warning about my lawn length. And, most shocking of all, they included a request. They wanted my help. Specifically, they asked if I would attend the next HOA meeting to discuss revising policies on homeowner relations and boundary enforcement. It was laughable. The same people who tried to annex my property now wanted guidance on respecting it. I didn't trust their motives, but I did trust leverage. So I agreed to attend, not to join them, but to remind them exactly how badly they misplayed their hand. The night of the meeting, I walked into the community clubhouse and faces actually brightened. People smiled. Some even clapped. Not because I was a hero, but because Karen wasn't there to dominate the room anymore. The board apologized publicly. Thompson stumbled through a speech about accountability and learning from mistakes. I kept my comments short. Respect boundaries. Respect property. And don't let fear of conflict blind you to the truth. If someone acts entitled, investigate. Don't enable. The room nodded in silent admission. They knew I was right. And they also understood that, legally, I could sue the entire board if I chose. Power dynamics are fun when they swing the right direction. Meanwhile, across the street, Karen awaited trial. Officers had escorted her away that day, but she wasn't formally arrested until all the evidence was processed. The charges: multiple counts of burglary, criminal trespass, destruction of property, child endangerment, and attempted arson. On paper, her perfect suburban reputation collapsed like wet cardboard. Her daughter, now staying with an aunt, sometimes sat on their porch steps and looked toward my yard with a sadness too big for her age. One afternoon, I walked over with a bag of pastries, a peace offering she didn't have to earn. She accepted shyly, like she wasn't sure kindness was allowed on her side of the street anymore. I told her again, gently, that none of this was her fault. She nodded and told me she missed her mom, but she also missed the version of her mom she thought existed before all this. I didn't have an answer for that grief. But Karen did. Because 1 week before her court date, she found a way to contact me. A handwritten note appeared taped to my mailbox. Scrawled in furious pen strokes. "You ruined me. Hope you're happy. See you in court." No apology. No remorse. Just a promise that she still believed herself the victim. The note was evidence now, too. Further proof the world she built in her mind was still her favorite place to live. The morning of the hearing, the courthouse parking lot buzzed with reporters and neighbors drawn by gossip. The victims of the burglaries were present, people who had lost more than jewelry. Some had lost trust in their own locked doors. In the lobby, I saw Karen escorted inside wearing a suit likely chosen to portray innocence she didn't possess. She avoided eye contact, staring ahead like I was a ghost that made her skin crawl. Inside the courtroom, everything became cold and factual. Footage rolled. Photos displayed. My pool, the site of her smug invasions, now framed as a vault of stolen memories. When the detective presented the jewelry box recovered from the drain, the judge looked directly at Karen. It was the kind of look that strips excuses down to bone. Her defense attorney tried spinning the narrative into delusion. Stress, miscommunication, confusion about property boundaries. But the prosecution countered with timestamps, fingerprints, eyewitness accounts, and her own daughter's recorded statements. The verdict didn't take long. Guilty. On multiple charges. Sentencing would come later, but the judge denied her request for probation. Karen collapsed into her chair, shaking, mascara running like a raccoon losing its dignity in the rain. Her daughter cried quietly in the gallery. The aunt hugged her, whispering comfort no one else could provide. As Karen was led away, she looked back one last time. Not hatred, not rage, just shock. Like she still couldn't comprehend that actions lead to consequences when the world stops letting you call them misunderstandings. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Microphones thrust forward. Questions firing. Did you suspect her? How long was this happening? What will you do now? I answered with the same calm tone I used from day one. I protected my home. I documented the truth. And the truth did the rest. When I returned home, my backyard felt different. The pool had been refilled and treated, clear and shimmering. The broken gate latch was replaced with a security-grade lock. The cameras stayed, not out of fear but as trophies of a battle won. I sat by the water, letting the quiet finally feel like peace instead of tension. And for the first time in what felt like years, I slipped into the pool myself. The water wrapped around me, cool, weightless, liberating. I floated on my back and stared up at the sky, letting the sunlight wash away weeks of stress. My phone buzzed. A message from my attorney. Congratulations. Case closed. Dinner on me soon. I smiled. Karen trespassed to claim a pool she thought should belong to her. But in the end, the only thing the police took from my pool was evidence of her guilt. And justice doesn't get more refreshing than that.